They built this tunnel themselves. Now most of them will not go back inside. Here is the actual reason why. It was built deeper beneath a fjord than almost anywhere else ever attempted on Earth. How do you actually build something this deep? And what actually happens to it once construction is finished? Let's find out together.
Building this tunnel and actually operating it turned out to be two completely different jobs, needing two completely different kinds of people.
Before it becomes the deepest tunnel most people will ever hear about, it starts as solid rock blasted steadily, meter by meter. Every segment that will eventually line this tunnel has to reach the fjord before any of it can start going underground. This is not ordinary blasting equipment. Every charge here has to be calibrated for rock that sits under enormous water pressure from above.
Every single charge has to break exactly the amount of rock it is supposed to, since not more and not less will do.
Alongside the blasting equipment, this concrete is being mixed to hold back water pressure, and most tunnel linings never actually have to consider.
Every single lining segment is tested against pressure deeper than the tunnel will actually ever reach, just to be absolutely certain.
Each segment here will eventually hold back the exact fjord it is about to be lowered beneath.
Before anything is blasted, they have to know exactly how deep this fjord actually gets and exactly how far below that the tunnel needs to sit.
Every truck here is heading toward a bore that will end up deeper than almost any tunnel ever attempted before it.
Through some of the most dramatic coastline in the world, and the pieces of this tunnel make their way to the exact point where it will actually begin.
The material has finally arrived, and now it has to become a tunnel deep enough that almost nobody who builds it will ever really need to see it again. Before a single blast happens, they already know exactly how deep this tunnel needs to go to actually be worth building at all.
Before anything goes underwater, an entire launch point has to be carved carefully out of the coastline itself.
And the very first blast does not go very deep at all, since it simply marks the exact beginning of a very long descent still to come. Every ton of rock removed here is 1 ton closer to the depth this entire tunnel actually needs to reach. The rock does not want to stay open on its own, since every single meter has to be held up carefully by hand. Each blast takes the bore 1 level deeper and 1 level further from the fjord's surface far above it. Above their heads, an entire fjord's worth of water pressure is being held back by a few thousand careful bolts.
Right behind the blasting, the tunnel's permanent wall goes in immediately, since there is no waiting until later.
Every single joint has to be completely sealed before the bore advances even 1 more meter further. Meter by meter, a path begins forming deeper beneath this fjord than almost anyone has ever attempted before. Even from the surface, they can track exactly where the tunnel is, meter by meter beneath the water below them. Every meter deeper here means more pressure, more caution, and more distance from anywhere anyone could quickly reach the surface. Right here, deeper than almost any other tunnel, like it is the lowest point the entire route will ever actually reach. This exact stretch gets more reinforcement than anywhere else in the tunnel for genuinely obvious reasons.
This exact section has to prove it can hold permanently under more pressure than the rest of the tunnel ever has to face.
It performs exactly as originally designed.
Having reached the lowest point, and the tunnel now has to climb its way back out again, just as carefully as it went down. For the first time, you can see exactly what this tunnel is going to look like from the inside. Even air has to travel a long way down here, since this shaft exists purely to keep it moving continuously.
On the far side of the fjord, an entire mirror image effort has been quietly underway the whole time.
2 crews working from opposite ends are both aiming for the exact same point deep beneath the water between them.
Hundreds of sensors just like this one will constantly monitor pressure and structural stress for decades to come.
And at this depth, if anything ever goes wrong, and these chambers exist purely to give people somewhere genuinely safe to wait it out.
Every one of these doors has to seal completely on the very first try, without exception.
After all of this, only a few final meters separate two tunnels that started from opposite sides of the fjord.
Just like that, two separate tunnels built from two different sides of the fjord finally become one single structure. For the first time, people who started this project from opposite ends of the fjord finally stand together in the exact same spot. This is the very last segment, connecting two halves of the exact same original idea together at last.
An entire fjord is now crossed by a single continuous tunnel deeper than almost anywhere else ever attempted. Inside this deep crossing, an entirely ordinary road quietly takes shape, as expected. From up here at sunset, there is nothing to suggest anything unusual is happening beneath this exact spot at all.
Every single inch of this deep crossing still passes through very human and very careful hands.
Even air has to travel a long way down here, since this shaft exists purely to keep it moving continuously.
At this depth, no shortcut is ever taken, with anyone's safety without exception.
3/4 finished, and already the deepest and most demanding section is safely behind them now. Soon this entire depth will not feel dark at all, but simply steady and quietly glowing throughout. The very last stretch was finished with exactly the same care as the very first one had been so long before.
From right here, it feels almost impossible to believe an entire fjord. Even the very last panel gets exactly the same careful finish as the very first one ever installed.
For the first time, the entire tunnel can now be monitored end to end from a single dedicated control room.
Every single refuge chamber gets tested together, and not just individually, because in a real emergency, they would all need to work at once. After all of this, which includes precision blasting, pressure-rated lining, and constant respect for the depth, the tunnel now stands complete.
Even now, the smallest detail is never left unfinished, no matter how far along the project has already come. One by one, the vessels that supported this build now scatter back to their ordinary, everyday routes. The fjord above looks exactly like it always did, while what has actually changed is everything now happening far beneath it.
This is one last walk across something they spent years building through every single meter before it belongs to the drivers who will actually use it.
Everything is now ready, except the real explanation for why most of them are already stepping back from returning.
This building is not for the people who built the tunnel, but for an entirely different, specially certified team who will actually run it.
Working at this depth long-term is not something the original construction crew was ever actually certified for, since it requires an entirely separate qualification. The people who will actually work here regularly train specifically for conditions the original construction crew was never expected to handle long-term.
This station watches the exact depth that made this entire project as difficult as it originally was to build.
This is a clear boundary now, controlling exactly who is actually cleared to work down here regularly and who genuinely is not.
Even the building for the new specialized team gets finished with exactly the same care as the tunnel itself received. This small plate marks a tunnel that quietly changed who was actually qualified to work inside it regularly.
Jeg said. After all of this, which includes precision blasting, pressure-rated concrete, and years of careful engineering, led to the court. Before it is ever declared fully operational, the entire tunnel gets checked one final time by... For the first time, the people actually trained for this exact depth finally take over watching it closely. This is exactly the moment most of the original crew steps back, not out of fear, but because their part of the job is genuinely finished. That every single light has now been checked and confirmed working exactly as designed, from one side of the fjord to the other. Every utility here now runs continuously beneath water, deep enough that this was never going to be an ordinary construction project. For most of them, this is genuinely the last time they will need to stand this close to it, and that was always the plan from the start. Everything is now ready, except the very first ordinary drivers still yet to arrive. And every calculation, every lining segment, and every pressure reading has now been approved one final time without exception. For the first time, the tunnel opens to ordinary drivers exactly as originally intended from the very beginning. To this driver, it is simply just a tunnel, since nothing about the drive suggests how deep or how difficult it actually was to build.
For them, being down here regularly is exactly what they trained for, since it was never something the original builders needed to keep doing themselves.
Occasionally, one of them does drive through, just not to work, but simply to see what all of it actually became in the end.
Most people come expecting something dramatic, while what they actually leave with is a straightforward answer about training and certification. Drias. Within weeks, what once seemed like the deepest, most difficult project in the entire region, somewhere inside the numbers are still being checked every single day by the exact team built specifically for exactly that job. This is one tunnel representing one deep and difficult build, and a genuinely simple answer to a question that sounded a lot stranger than it actually was. Every sunrise still passes over this exact spot, the same way it always has for as long as anyone can remember. This is not just rock and reinforced concrete, but rather what happens when building something and actually running it turn out to need two completely different kinds of people. They built it, and someone else runs it now, and the reason was never as mysterious as it originally sounded.
This video is created for education and informational purposes using advanced AI tools and human creativity. All concepts, scripting, and storytelling are independently developed to ensure originality. Visuals and animations are generated or enhanced using AI technologies such as VO3, Meta AI, and Grok AI, while final editing and post-production and completed using CapCut and other professional editing tools. No external created content has been copied or reused. Any semblance to real-world environments, factories, or processes is purely coincidental. All scenes shown in this video are digitally created and do not represent real footage. This content is produced with transparency and follows YouTube monetization guidelines.